Hello and welcome to the Big Time Strength Podcast. I'm your host for this week, Amanda Berg. We got a great show coming for you today. I am going to interview Coach Paul Kolody, and I'm sure that's a name that a lot of you have heard. He has been leading in strength and conditioning and really putting himself out there the last few years that I've been able to witness what he's been doing. And I've been very lucky this year to get to know him very well through a Desire to Lead program that we've been doing with our high school students, which I hope we get to talk a little bit about today. Before we talk to Coach, let's talk about our sponsors. We got TeamBuildr. Thank you, TeamBuildr, for sponsoring today's episode. They're the leading software of high school strength and colleges by providing coaches the ability to write programs online, generate reports, and even train athletes remotely for side income. This has been a great feature added to TeamBuildr, and you've heard Gage talk about how he's been really utilizing that in the private sector. So some great things going on with TeamBuildr. As always, if you sign up with the code BigTime, you'll get a free APRE programming template, which works automatically within TeamBuildr. No more spreadsheets or workout cards to track training maxes that change day by day. Automate your program without outsourcing your programming with TeamBuildr. We have PowerLift. PowerLift is a leading manufacturer and distributor of heavy-duty strength and training equipment for collegiate and high school athletic performance centers around the world. PowerLift brings over 20 years of experience to the strength and conditioning world, with all their products manufactured in their state-of-the-art facility in Jefferson, Iowa. But also look into their great podcast, the blogs, awesome educational stuff. So great stuff out there from our sponsors. We are ready. Coach Kolody, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Amanda. This is a pleasure for me.
I'm excited. Like I said, as far as first knowing your name in strength and conditioning, I'd say Nashville conference. I was able to, I think we met, and then I got to know you this year through having our students. What was fun today is I went back and listened to a podcast you had done with Dane Nelson in 2016, and it was actually after the first national conference for the National High School Strength Coaches Association. So that was a lot of fun to hear your insight from that, because I was at that conference as well. Mm-hmm. And then we actually just met in person for the first time in Minnesota last month, didn't we?
Oh, it was awesome. Yeah, it was great to see you, and it was great to see everybody again. Really, just to be in person. After COVID and having so many virtual events and seeing you on Zoom all that time with Desire to Lead, it was great to give hugs again. It was great.
Yeah, it really was. And it's amazing. I know we have it with COVID and stuff. We haven't been able to have in-person stuff, but when you go through, what we did, a leadership program, and the amazing people the connections that we have, when you meet each other, there's like, no really having to catch up. It's just like, know each other, isn't it?
Yeah. That table we had downstairs on the last night was, it was like family, everybody sitting around, and with the Carnes family down there, and you and Jessica, and it was awesome.
It was, and we were just able to connect. So there have been some great things to come out of COVID, and connecting with coaches. I mean, getting involved with the podcast and being able to connect with coaches have been one of the biggest ones. Mm-hmm. I actually have been trying to get to you for 2 years now. I had planned to go to New Jersey. Originally, I think it was 2020. Is that when the first one, when you were supposed to host?
Yep.
Jessica Gust and I, we were looking up our tickets, getting everything ready to go. And then that one got canceled. Mm-hmm. And then last year you asked me to speak at, or this year you asked me to speak at. I was like, yes, get to go. I've actually never been to the East Coast side anywhere. And I was like, yes, get to go. And then that one was virtual. So I still have not got to enjoy your facility. I'm getting out there.
We're going to do it. And, between Kevin and Zach, we got to make sure that we have it at our place again, because I'm itching. I'm ready to go.
You're prepared. Definitely.
I'm ready.
Yeah. You've been planning for it. All right. So you're currently the coach at Hunterdon Central. Is that,
Yes,
did I say the name right?
correct.
For 11 years. And then you came into this field through athletic training. Let's hear a little bit of your history on that.
I did. And I started as an athletic training student in college for my undergrad, but I wanted to play baseball in college. And back then they had something called an internship program where you could get your hours whenever you needed to. Well, I played baseball for 4 years and I got 0 hours. So when I came out, I'm a hustler. I like to work. And so I just started trying to get hours wherever I could. And I ended up at Bridgewater State College in Massachusetts for a 2-year internship. And I knocked out my hours. And when I was listening to your podcast the other night about women in strength and conditioning, I worked under a strong woman at Bridgewater State. Her name was Gina Polanchek. Her dad was the offensive line coach for the New England Patriots because we were really close to their facility. And for years, she was trying to get into the NFL as an athletic trainer. And I mean, she was well qualified. I mean, she held us accountable. You talked about hold us accountable. She held us accountable every day. And she made me the person I was, not only on the strength and conditioning side, but the athletic training side, about holding yourself accountable every day, working hard, having justification for what you do. And that was an everyday thing, a 24/7, every day at Bridgewater State. And man, when I got out of there, I knew I could take on the world. I started out of high school, did 3 years there. A hospital took me on as an athletic trainer. And I started working in pro baseball right away in an independent league. And then moved on from there. One of the teams we played was in Nashua, New Hampshire, about 45 minutes from Mike Boyle's facility. I called him one day and drove down there with the team van and spent the whole morning there watching how they did things. And when I left there, I said, this is what I want to do. So Tuesdays and Thursdays, I started setting up circuits on the field for our pitchers, and our pitchers did it every Tuesday, Thursday, along with our tempo runs and what we did. And I started taking it on the road and finding ballrooms when we got to hotels, and we did all of our work, our bands, our dumbbells. And along with my athletic training, I started a strength and conditioning program for that pro team. And yeah, I never looked back from there. I transitioned, got completely out of the training room. And I want to say probably 2003 went full-time strength and conditioning.
Okay. And that first one was for a team or for the hospital?
It was for the hospital. So we opened up a facility in 2003, and we were one of the first ever, other than Bill Parisi had a place in Fairlawn. We were really the only other in 2003 retail strength and conditioning facility in the area. And the kids either came to us or drove to Fairlawn. And we got a lot of student athletes from the area. Nobody had high school strength coaches back then.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. It sounds like on the East Coast, it seems like strength and conditioning, a lot of them do have that athletic training background because it might have been the only avenue to really get into it.
It was, yeah.
And then how did you get to Hunterton?
I left the hospital for another venture that didn't turn out. And it was literally 5 months after that other venture kind of failed. The AD from Hunterdon Central gave me a call, said, hey, our guy's leaving. You want to join us? And I live right in town. I've lived here for 22 years. And I looked at my wife. She's like, let's give it a go. So I took that job and, again, haven't looked back since.
Okay. Wow. And in Hunterton, you're not a teacher, correct? You're
I'm not. I'm a full-time strength and conditioning coach.
Full-time strength and conditioning coach.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What does a typical day look like in that setting?
Get in around 10:15, prepare for lunch. So at lunch, we do leadership training now. So I'll have kids come in and we'll do leadership during their lunch. So they'll come in, they'll bring their lunch in. I got my precision nutrition last year, actually 2 years ago. So we may do some nutrition stuff. So kids schedule time with me during that lunch period between 10:30 and 11:15. And then at about 11:20, I'll go down, I'll sit with our athletic trainer. We'll talk about what happened the day before. And we'll talk about, any trends or the game or, just life. And then around 12:30, 12:45, I'll start setting up the weight room, get everything I have needed for my prep work done. And then 2:00, school ends, the kids start rolling in. And depending on the day, we start anywhere between 2:30 and 2:45. And I'll leave around 7:15 every night.
Wow. So your training starts after school.
Yep.
Okay. Wow, I mean, I've heard of a lot of schedules where they're training athletes during the day,
Mhm.
maybe in the South, it seems like that's a tendency, but after school, that seems like it could be a fun schedule. You get to see the games, I bet, a lot more of the activities at night.
At night, yeah. So my daughter played soccer for 3 years at Hunterdon Central, and I probably saw 5 total games of hers because they play all at 4:30. So, but I'm full bore training. I mean,
Yeah.
once we start at 2:30, I don't stop until 7:30. So a teacher at Hunterdon Central will start at 7:30 and then end at 2:30 with one block off. So they'll teach for 3 blocks. They'll teach for 4.5 hours. I'm
Wow.
training for 4.5, 5 hours. So my schedule just shifted into the evening, just like a teacher schedule.
Okay. Ooh, it seems like it could have a lot of benefits though.
It is, and I've trained both of my kids, and my son's going to be a junior now, and he lifts with me every day in football or comes to the turf, and I get to go to his practices, and it's great.
Good, good. All right. Well, I want to go back and talk about how I listened to your podcast, of one that you had done in 2016. And one of the biggest things was, you had talked about being involved in this new organization, the
Mhm.
National High School Strength Coaches Association. 5 years later, going back to that, Paul Kolody, how, from what's happened, you've been very involved. Have you, from your involvement, evolved related to strength and conditioning?
Oh, it's been tremendous from meeting Coach Boone to some of the other great strength coaches in our association. Just how I handle myself in the weight room every day. Some of the things that I do as far as and actually for knowing you, the sign you have up in your weight room, it says everybody belongs. You talked about that and our desire to lead. And one of our girls groups was kind of really quiet the other day, and it was a freshman group, and it was probably like 30 girls. And I said, hey, you belong here. You can start acting like that. Don't act like this is, you got to step on glass or stepping on eggshells. Act like you belong in here. Let's start working. And all of a sudden the mood changed. They started getting a little louder and moving around. I'm like, damn, that worked, and it just, that was something where I just picked it up from you over the years, and just little pearls here and there. And I think I've become so much better as a strength coach. Programming sets and reps, I think that's easy for everybody to try and figure out. But as far as the evolution of me as, interacting with the students, how I talk to them a little bit different. Um, some of my sets and reps have changed, and some of the things on the turf, like looking at Joey Burgles and some of the stuff he does down in Texas, or Kyle Keese, using the grid and the Geyer grid. I use that almost every week now. And Jeremy Evans and some of the things he does. It's just, I think the evolution of Paul Kolody has been so great over the last 5 years. Even using TeamBuildr, I never thought I'd use TeamBuildr. I was an Excel spreadsheet guy. We talked about Coach McKinnon and maybe a whiteboard guy, but I use my TeamBuildr like crazy now, and how I use it. And I had a college athlete in the other days, and I showed him the chart of where our weights were and how I chart our weights and stuff. He's like, wow, I can't believe you're doing this. From what we had, we had a little book that we used. He's like, now you can look at it real time right away. I'm like, yeah, it's crazy, right? It's been completely different.
Yeah, and it's amazing, you say little things adding here and there. I don't even realize when I change my programming sometimes right now, because if I have a question, we have access now to so many coaches. You could just instantly call them, or you could send a quick message, and
Mhm.
and then you don't even realize, okay, yep, I tried it, and now I'm doing this day in and
Yeah,
day out. And sometimes you almost even forget where you get it from,
yeah.
because you've heard somebody talk about it. So that's an excellent point. You had talked about Coach McKenna, and on our podcast, I just wanted to take some time for somebody to be able to talk about their relationship with Coach McKinnon. For our listeners, Coach John McKenna, a coach out of Notre Dame High School, and huge impact in the strength and conditioning. And we just went through our last conference, and you actually came later
Yeah.
because you were at the funeral, and he recently passed away. And I know he's made an impact on so many, and I can especially tell on the East Coast. You know, we got to know him, as Ryan Johnson says, we got to know him fast.
Mhm.
And where a lot of you were able to know him for a lot of years before this organization. Can you just talk a little bit about your relationship with him and things that impacted you?
Yeah, I mean, he's the guy who gave me the call, probably, the first month into the NHSSCA. And he said, "Hey, listen, I've heard a lot of great things about what you're doing, and I want you to get involved, and we can make a great thing, not only in New Jersey, but in the Northeast." And man, I was all in from that point. I remember watching him and listening to him at Hammer Strength clinics, and he was just a pioneer. Like he would come up with a concept, and he had a guy who was a welder in town, and he would weld bars for him. And he had a friend who got kettlebells cheap. I mean, if you've ever walked through his weight room, he had more kettlebells than I've ever seen in a weight room before. He trained the fire department in Trenton and in his town. So he knew a lot of the guys, because those firemen are all volunteers down there. So he knew a lot of the guys that worked during the day as linesmen for the telephone company and stuff like that. And he had a telephone pole in his weight room that he had cut up into pieces that we would use for log carries. He had the molds for the stones in there. Like, it just, every time I walked in there, he had a different story for me, or something else to tell me, where I walked out of there and talk about pearls. Every time you walked out, you're like, yeah, I'm going to use that. The biggest one he told me was, it was probably, because I didn't see him much during COVID. We talked on the phone, but before COVID, I went over, and he had always had a lineman competition he always said the linemen never get any press, any notoriety. So we did a lineman competition, and I always brought 2 teams of linemen. And I went there and I talked to him after it, and he said, "Listen," he goes, "this is my suggestion to you," because we were talking about some troubles I was having getting kids involved, and getting some of the parents involved. He says, get involved as much as you can in your school, not so much in strength and conditioning, but go up and meet with the cafeteria staff, talk to them and see, because they see the kids every day, get to know them, get to know the administration better. If the administration's doing something, go out with them, do it with them. If they're doing a fundraiser, get involved with that. I mean, he trained the priests at Notre Dame. So there were 7 priests. They came down and trained in his weight room. And they were all there at his funeral. And the head priest at Notre Dame gave his first eulogy. And he said just some great stories about how when his grandkids showed up, he says, I am so happy he had so many grandkids, because when they showed up, he forgot how many sets I'd done at that point. And I was so gassed. I just wanted it. It was awesome, and we were all laughing. And that was Coach, so involved in everything, in his faith, in the community, with the fire department, with the police department. And that's how I'll always remember him. And more importantly, his family. Cheryl would say that no matter what, even if it was 10 o'clock at night when he got home, they had dinner together as a family. They would sit down and have dinner. And that was Coach.
Wow. Yeah, you can tell he made, just watching him interact with the coaches who knew him, ones like you who had been in his weight room and seen him in action. And, before this, just watching them with them and the comfort level,
Mhm.
amazing. On my end, one of the biggest interactions that I had with him was when he sat down at that round table and said, from now on, a coach who'd been there for years and years, from now on, I'm going to make it a point to work hard to get 50% of my coaching staff to be female. And being able to say that, later on in their career, just really, it hit me hard, and it stuck with me forever. So thank you for sharing that about him.
Yeah, he was, he's going to be missed big time. And, it's just, I'm just glad that I got to spend the last 5-6 years getting to know him a lot better, other than just listening to him at conferences, and, to have those conversations and sit in his weight room and talk to him on the phone. And, I'm definitely going to miss him.
Yeah, and just his legacy. I'm so grateful that he chose to speak out about his craft. That
Yeah.
was one of the first things that, when he passed away, the co-host and I said, wow, we are so lucky that we get to learn from these people on the podcast, but then we have this forever,
Mhm.
right? His family gets to hear the impact that he made to others through this. So yeah, exciting stuff. And I'm grateful for you to share that with us. Well, how about you right now? What are you really focusing on learning? What are you moving ahead with and diving in?
I'm definitely focused on the leadership part. I've already talked I've been through the WLA with Coach, and we've done the DTL with 2 groups, and I'm already starting to queue up some of my student athletes for the fall. I've actually mentioned to a couple of coaches that I like to get involved. So I got a new coach involved in the spring. I'd like to bring 1 or 2 more on the fall, and that's one side. And I know you've done leader kit, and that's something that I think I want to dive into and really get involved with next year, or at the end of this year and into next year, um, to get stronger with that, and be more clear with my student athletes of what I expect from them, and what they can expect from me as well every day. And that clarity is something that I know I struggled with a little bit at first, but I'm making a hard charge. If I'm going to use I'm going to charge on with that, and really, really, yeah, I'm going to dial in on that.
Well, that kind of we like I said, we work with students. I guess we should probably talk about the Desire to Lead program, what it is, a little bit before next year. But this is something that Jeremy Boone has been doing in North Carolina for quite a while. And then when COVID happened, he started doing it remotely. And I don't think he expected what happened as far as the connections that we made as coaches and the students that they connected together through it. But so that this past year, we've been a variety of coaches have been part of it, and that we've been doing that. And so along the lines of leadership, and we should say there's going to be another one in the fall. So if you hear us talking about it in the fall and see us social media, every single coach I feel like should be doing this. I've heard student leadership groups now is the equivalent to your sports team as having a strength and conditioning program was years ago, right? It is that next cutting edge thing that is out there. And I can see it from our athletes. You can see their transformation just within a couple of questions, can't you?
Oh yeah. And it's awesome that we're almost 3/4 of the way through the summer, and I had one of our DTL athletes out on the turf the other day, and we were talking about something, and she was being goofy. I said, "Hey, listen, tell me the first trait of a good leader." She's like, "Oh, coach, you're going to make me pull out my notes." I said, "You shouldn't have to look at your notes." And she goes, and she came up with something and it was wrong. I said, "Make great decisions." She's like, "Oh yeah, that's right." But bringing it back, and then all of a sudden she's looking at me like with a little gleam in her, like, "All right, I got you." So that, it was good just to have that refreshing, because, in New Jersey, I mean, 4 weeks ago was the first time I could take a mask off in the weight room. And it's been difficult, like seeing their faces. And there were some kids I never even knew what they looked like, freshmen last year, because we've always been wearing a mask. So yeah, one of our boys volleyball players walked in. I'm like, "Who are you?" And he comes every day. He's like, "It's Andrew." I'm like, "What?" So it was crazy. But yeah, we had a lot of fun with it. You were a great mentor to me, as far as the DTL, and I'm hoping I can take it and run and become better at that.
Good. I'm excited for it. Well, that kind of leads me to the next topic, and hopefully you don't have to look at your notes. What do you think that right now the top 2 ingredients of an elite leader is in today's world?
I think definitely making great decisions. And that's our first thing in there. And then, I know there's other things in that definition, but I think having clarity on what you say and how you bring it across to the kids, so they understand it, so they understand what's going on. And if you're not clear, it's just not going to stick with them. I think the best compliment anybody ever gave me was that I got it, that I understand it, that if I can listen and pay attention well enough, that I could teach it to the next person in like that. Um, and I told this to our kids the other day. I said, I wasn't the best reader in college, but I took great notes. I listened and paid attention. And I said, I saved all my notes from college. I have them in a bin down in the basement. My wife goes crazy. Yeah, it's nuts. But if you look through my notes, how how clear I was with writing things down. And I know some of my friends used to retype their notes. I didn't have to, because the way I wrote them and the way I understood them helped me pass my tests and do what I had to do. And I want to try to relay that on to our students, that if you're clear with your peers, if you're clear on what we have to do, and coach says that all the time, there's no other decisions to make. There's not any other choices. This is what we need to do, period. And I think that, to me right now, is my second big one, other than influence. I think that clarity will influence others. So, make great decisions and have great clarity in what you're saying and relaying to your students, to the parents, to the community, on what you're doing with your student athletes.
Yeah, I love it. And I think we talk about leaders making decisions so often, but the concept of good decisions.
Yeah.
I like how you say that, because that isn't something I say enough over and over to the students that I work with, where I honestly, as an adult, sometimes forget that they're not making great decisions until it's too late.
Yeah.
What somebody had done. And just giving that, as it is one of the most important things right now with everything going on and how the teenage brain and things changing. So that helps, I think. And that is clear. Good decisions,
Yeah.
good decisions. What is one of your biggest lessons that you've learned? Let's go strength and conditioning wise. What's one of your biggest lessons as a coach that you've learned over time?
Well, I think it's to actually have that mission or vision visible to the kids, to make them know it and understand it. We were talking about, I want to say this is probably 3-4 years ago at a conference. It may have been a Northeast Regional in Pittsburgh. And I don't know if it was Matt Kubler who was there talking. He was friends with Coach McKinnon. He wrote the book, 2 Dates and a Dash. We all have one date in the beginning, one date at the end, and we have a dash. What you do with your dash is up to you. I forgot how it came up, but I was talking about a mission or something like that. He says, well, what is your mission? And it made me think about it. And he says, not only what is your mission, but do the kids know what it is? If I walked into Hunterdon Central right now and I said, what is Coach Kolody's mission? Would they be able to recite it? And I went, no, they wouldn't. And I stepped back for a second and I started going, oh man, I'm not doing a great job. But then I, eventually started to think, all right, well, this is a learning experience. This is a lesson I have to learn to make sure that now when I go back, that the kids have to understand what's important to me. And I actually had not long after that, I had a parent with a Cricut, and I bought a Cricut since then, make letters for me. And I have 3 big pillars in my weight room, and it's commitment, consistency, and discipline, CCD. If you're Catholic, CCD reaffirmed your faith in God every time you went to it, and you learned how to have that lesson with the Lord. And then you got through your first communion and did all of those things with the CCD. CCD to me means reaffirming your faith in yourself, in your team, and our community and our school. So commitment to what we do, consistency in how you do it, and then discipline to hold yourself and your teammates accountable. And if we can do that every day, that to me is a big deal. So I say that to the kids. I point to the pillar. Where's your discipline? You saw that person doing that. How come you didn't say something to them? Or you knew it was 5 reps and you only did 3. That's not having a whole lot of discipline. So I can point to those pillars right away. And it was right after that Northeast Regional that I decided those have to go up there. So that was a big lesson for me. Like, wow, I wasn't really getting it across. And he just put me on the spot right there and I had no answer. So that was a big deal for me.
Okay, so getting it out there. I've heard even one more step is it should scare you to death. Like you're just always working towards it, you know? And
Yeah.
that's great that you pointed out to your student that what's going to happen if you're not doing that. You
Yeah.
know, no. So,
And it's right there, like, again, just going back to your sign that says you're welcome here, and you can say that, hey, listen, you're welcome here. This is what I need from you guys. And, yeah, I thought that, to me, I've learned a lot of lessons along the way, how I speak to students, things like that. But I think that was a big one, that led me to start even thinking about the stuff that we're doing with Coach Boone and some of the books I've read. And yeah, I think that was a good start for me.
okay. How about family wise? You said your family grew up, your students went to the school. You
Yeah.
said you're close, you're within you could walk to school.
Yeah.
What lessons have you learned through this process?
I've learned that my wife has been a saint through this whole process. And I haven't thanked her enough over the years. And we had our 25th anniversary not long ago. And, I've always been thinking about, the first thing I would think about is, wow, a trip would cost this much or cost this much, especially, um, when some of the times where we weren't making money during COVID, like I have a side job that was closed
Yeah,
to make money. And I said, you know what, my wife deserves, she loves Disney. And so we booked a trip to Disney and just she and I went down there and we got shirts that said just married 25 years ago. And we wore those to the park and just to spend some time with her because when I was doing professional baseball, I'd be on the road for 9 days. And spring training, I remember when my daughter was born, I got a call at 1 o'clock in the morning and, Sarah screaming on the phone and my wife saying, where are you? And I know it was tough on her. And um, I probably haven't thanked her enough and told her how much it's meant to me that she's been by my side through this whole thing. So um, I've had a chance to reflect on that a little bit more, hug my kids a little bit more. My
yeah,
son, never thought I'd see the day where, he'd come home and say, Dad, I maxed out on bench today and, just enjoying the weight room. And it's just, it's a reality check for me. It's in such a good way for that. And my daughter becoming a senior and, um, getting ready to apply to PA school. So if anybody out there runs PA schools, I got a great candidate for you. She's a great student and just so proud of my family and what they're doing. That's something I've heard from Coach Boone as well, and some of the other people from DTL, how important their family was to them.
excellent. Wow. And that's great to hear because I feel like I'm starting this process where, you're talking about with your family right now. My kids, I have 3 kids, and they're all going to be in the school with me this year. And our
All
middle
right.
school, high school is connected. And I remember driving to daycare when every single cent that I was making was going to pay for daycare and coaching, and other people were having to pick them up because I was coaching all the time. I remember thinking someday I'm going to be able to drive all my kids to school and we're going to have our suppers at school. And this is the year that it starts. So I'm very excited for this next step and just to hear you talk about it with so much joy. Um, I need to make sure that I really take it in.
Yeah. And I can tell you the rides don't always happen. Like even now, like we're 7:30 to 8:30 on the turf, and then he does some stuff with the linemen. And at 10 o'clock, I see him running to go catch a ride from somebody else. And I have no idea who's driving him home.
Yep.
So when I get home, I'm like, hey, who'd you get a ride from today? But that's the way I grew up too. You never knew. You just, you jumped in somebody's car and they ended up taking you home. So, I'm glad he gets to experience that.
Yeah, that is my kids too. They get to experience that part of it, and all of a sudden they're home. I get a text, "Yep, I'm at home." Like, good. I'm glad somebody got you.
Yeah.
So, well, good. And I had talked earlier before we were recording. I said I'm really focusing on longevity right now. I think I'm halfway in my career, and honestly, I don't know if it was COVID, but last year was hard. It was
Yeah.
it was really hard. And I think when you get so involved, you think, oh, maybe I could be doing other stuff, and
Mhm.
maybe I should be doing this, and maybe this isn't my calling. But I know, like, I love being a strength coach, and I love being in the high school setting, and stepping away from the summer really helped with that. What do you think on your end? What is something that I should be doing every day to keep this this profession fresh and enjoyable?
Oh, I try to laugh and have fun with the kids every day. I tell my dad jokes. You know, we were doing, I forgot what skipping drill we were doing the other day, and the kids were laughing. And I said, you know, how do you make a tissue dance? And they all looked at me like, what? And I said, yeah, you put a little boogie in it, you know, and they're like, oh, that's a dad joke. Just trying to have fun every day. Not only that way, but getting to know the kids and their families a little bit. I've got some great friendships in town from kids that I've coached, that we can go out on a Friday night and, you know, have friends with the parents. And I think getting that involvement in the community, and I'm sure you do already, but I think that's kept it fresh for me. And, you know, getting the text, I had a dad the other day, we were doing a plate finisher and we had the music cranking. And after we were done, I turned around and I saw Bruce with his phone up videotaping it. I said, I need that videotape, you know, and just that interaction with the parents and having fun. I think that keeps it fresh. And there's going to be bad days, just like, you know, any other profession, but um, getting to know the parents, getting involved in the community. My wife does some stuff with the Booster Club with football now because my son plays football, and now we go to Booster Club events and things like that. So it just keeps it fun for me.
Good, yeah. Laugh, joke with them. That was hard this year. I think it was one of the first things that pulled away, you know, when you have so many things that you're trying to get done and be present. So perfect. All right, right now, uh, three people that I should be learning from.
Oh, well, you're already learning from one of them with Coach Boone. There's a hidden gem out there. Somebody I learned from a while ago, Rob Rogers, and you know he stepped out of the game a little bit, and he's here and there. I mean, Rob Rogers has been so many places, and he's a guy when you listen to him talk. You know what? I'm going to send you one of his. You got to have a CD player though. Um,
I
you
do in my car.
all right. I'm going to send you one of his CDs about hip training. I'll get it. I'll get it in the mail next week. Um, you listen to his tapes, and I'm saying tapes too because I have a couple of his tapes. But he became a good friend, and I brought him up to New Jersey to speak one weekend. And when you're done listening to him, you go, "Yeah, that makes sense." You know what I mean? He puts it in a way where it really makes sense. He has something called NAT that he taught me, neuromuscular activation training, and you know, from the plank activation to some of the stuff that we do that I still do. Um, he made it make sense to me. And in some of his training, the way he talks about sequence and order, about how things have to be done in sequence and order. When we talk about not only doing things fast to doing things and for not only with your daily progressions, but your monthly and yearly progressions as well, sequence and order. Um, yeah, I still go back and look at all his stuff. And I just went over his things the other day. Um, you know, Jeremy, I think, is on the cutting edge right now as far as the leadership training. I just talked to one of our young strength coaches who I work with at my other job about that today, that how he should get involved. And I think that's huge. On the on the on the data side, and on the technology side, you probably know more than me on that. I'd love to get to learn more about velocity based training. I was on the other day with Coach Hoover, listening to him talk about it. Man, he's dialed in. So that may be somebody I want to jump in and give that a shot with a little bit more, and learn from him how he's doing it.
Yes, I'm actually at the beginning stages of it right now. Just had our first VMAX Pros, and we're starting with it this summer and kind of moving on and using it. Rich Burnett also put out a great thing the other day on why you should be using velocity-based training, and what a great tool that you could use to introduce to your administration of what it is. And But
Yeah.
yeah, that's a good stuff right now with that.
Big
And
shout out to Coach Burnett because he told me I had the best RSI test at the thing.
oh,
He didn't say I was an old man, but he said for a guy like you, I'm like, it's an old man. All right, so I'll take it.
we'll take it. Yeah, great stuff from him. I got to speak with Rich Burnett at we did at about heart rate monitors at the
Yep.
national conference, and anything we get to do with him is awesome. He's great. So along those lines, though, what summertime? What book should I be reading right now?
Oh, I don't have it up here. My favorite one, and everybody knows John Gordon, Energy Bus, things like that. His brother Dave Gordon wrote a book called TIP, TIP, and it stands for Take It Personally, and it talks about creating identity that'll last with you forever. And it's a storybook, and I'm gonna read it again. When I gave out my scholarship this year to my Iron Red Devils, they all got a book. They all got that book. And when I finished reading it, I found Dave Gordon's information on his Instagram, sent him a message, told him how much I loved it and what I was going to do. And he said, I'm going to do a private Zoom with you guys and to talk about the book once they get it and read it. And we're going to have a private Zoom and we're going to discuss how recreating your identity is such a big deal. So yeah, that's a great one. TIP. I have one chapter left. The Slight Edge is a great one.
Okay.
And the Slight Edge is simple. If you've read that already, it just talks about how, the great ones and it talks about the difference between the people that are great and the people that are not so great. And it's just doing everything the same every day, and never giving up on it. Just like, you make your bed every day for 30 days. What are you going to do on day 31? You going to keep making it, or are you going to, stop making it? You just keep going and doing the right things. We call them guiding principles. That's something that, we talk to our kids about every day, that low hanging fruit. Let's get them done every day. Because if we can't do that, how are we going to talk about winning championships and things like that? So Slight Edge was a good one. And I usually have my pile of books up here, but they're downstairs and I brought some to school. If you haven't read Legacy yet, that's another great one. I read that one during COVID. I just talked to Martin Rooney the other day. I read Coach to Coach a while ago, and he has a new one out called High 10. I love Coach to Coach, and his new one, High 10. And I'm going to try and give that one a shot too as well. So that's my next one after I'm done with Slight Edge. I'm going to order that one.
Okay, so I take it you're a reader.
I'm a better reader than I used to be.
Okay.
I still love podcasts. I go for walks. I am an older guy, so I don't go running anymore. I do lift weights. Not as big as Scott Meyer does. I see him out there doing it. I'm like, oh man, he's almost my age and he's killing it. I gotta step up my game a little bit. But I go for walks. I listen to podcasts on my walks. Believe it or not, I still watch DVDs and I still watch tapes. I have a cassette player. I have a VCR. Don't judge me. I still do that. And, but I've gotten better at reading. Yes. So I've gotten better. I'm not the greatest. It still takes me a while to get through a book, but yeah.
Okay. Well, along those lines, you talk about your DVD player and tape player. Sometimes sticking to things like that keep you who you are. Mm-hmm. In strength and conditioning, what are some things, even athletic training, from the beginning that you thought were beneficial, you used, and you're still using to this day? I mean, we have access to so much information and trying so many things. What are some gems that you tried true, and you still use?
Justification. Gina Polanchek, we would do an ankle tape job. And when you do an ankle tape job, there's certain things that you have to do in that tape job. And if you have a wrinkle in your tape job, that could create a blister. Mm-hmm. If you have a hole in your tape job, that could create a blister. So she would say, all right, so if you have a hole in that tape job, number one, how are you going to cover it? And what's that strip of tape going to do? I don't want it just to cover that hole. It's got to have a purpose in what you're doing in that tape job. And the kids would be like, looking around like, oh man, and under the gun. To me, again, that was every day her holding us accountable and under the gun for what we were doing. I've taken that with me everything I do. And that's part of that CCD that I have with those kids. I think that's been a pearl that I've taken with me my whole life. I know one thing we talked about in one of the questions when I was filling out the form was a great quote. And this isn't the quote, but when my dad was my high school wrestling coach and I got to coach with him over time, the first thing he would do is he'd make a new sign every year. And it was the same sign. It was fatigue is the worst opponent, and that, when you're tired, your brain's going to be the first thing to say, hey, I'm done. And, taking that with me the whole time with these kids to say, I know you're tired, but that's not good. That's not a great excuse for you to make 5 reps, 3 reps. Let's make sure we get through everything. Let's take some weight off. Let's do this. Let's make it so you can get everything done so that you understand that now on Friday night or Tuesday afternoon, you're still going to be able to push through that difficult time. So, that uncomfortable, even though he was saying that be comfortable being uncomfortable, that wasn't a saying back in the 80s, so that was kind of that back in the day.
I actually wrote that down from the podcast. I think, and what a great thing to just say, have as a tool right now when we're trying to teach coaches about conditioning, right? That was the first thing that I took from that quote when you said that. I'm like, oh my gosh, I need to put this right on my slide talking about conditioning and how we need to not be killing them. And tired does not just, it only means tired.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that quote stuck out to me as well.
And that's, those are 2 big things I've taken along, and then as far as organization goes, watching Coach Boyle, the way they did their thing back in it was 1999 when I went to visit his Westminster facility and saw how they just took their kids through the warm up to the speed portion, to the Olympic lifts and fast, and then the core lifts, and then finish, and then out the door, and how they had that set up and the organization. I can tell you right now, we're going to have 64 kids in my first group tomorrow morning. And I call it Chaos Friday. And you're not going to realize there's 64 kids in there. There's going to be a lot of kids in there, but you're going to see how well we move about the room. I call it the churn.
Yeah.
When you come out here, we'll make sure we get you to the Hershey Chocolate Factory. And, part of their thing is the Hershey Chocolate Tour, and it's the churn, how they make chocolate, the steps it goes through to make chocolate the way Hershey makes chocolate. And my weight room, I feel like it churns. Coach Schofield talked about don't grind, grease. You want your gears to be greased and move freely and do things the right way. Kind of the same thought process. I want things to work so well in my weight room that we can get more done. And the more we can get done, the better we're going to be. And the kids pretty much understand that. There are times when they get off track a little bit and we got to reel them back in. And there's sometimes I knock them off track, but it's the process, that organization to me is a big deal. So those are 3 big things that I take with me every day.
Excellent. It's awesome when you can start to get to that higher level when you are on the track, and then yes, you kind of get knocked off a little bit and you can get right back on. If you're, for instance, having a conversation with a kid, we use a timing system. Mm-hmm. And it's okay. I've learned, I used to be so strict with it. It's okay if we're a little bit late with this situation, certain here, and how we can get back on. So I like hearing that.
Watching your combat fitness stuff when we were doing it, I'm like, yeah, this is it. How those kids are working and doing stuff together. And, that was awesome. That's, I still got to get that. I got to get involved in that in September in my weight room a little bit, and really put that into my logistics a little bit more, with some of the carries and things, the way you did it. I have a ton of notes on it. So I'm ready to go.
I could talk about that all day. I just that's what I want to be talking about right now. Cause I love being able to go back to my past a little bit.
Yeah.
And to bring it in with the students, it's been well over a generation for them. And mm-hmm. So it's fun to be able to go back with it. So yes, anytime you want to talk about it, I'm open.
All right.
I love it. So actually, that helps really good. You pour into so many coaches and are always willing to give feedback and take chances. How can other coaches, I want to say, how can I help pour into you? Like, what do you learn from other coaches and want to see coaches do?
I believe it or not, and I wasn't a big tech guy, but the Instagram and watching other people work and have fun, like I love Scott Meyer's stuff. I love watching his brutal recess. I love the kids, having fun and seeing what's going on there. I love I sometimes I get consumed in that, watching that, and it makes me feel good seeing other coaches doing that. It's what is it? It's in North Carolina. It's Protect the Land. I can't think of the name of the Instagram post. And when Coach Clark was before he left, when he was in Indiana, watching some of his groups, the way they worked and did stuff. And I know I want to be a fly on Coach Vanderbush's wall one day and watch how that room works. He talks about how he has 10,000 square feet and he has upper body on this side, lower body on this side. The kids come in with a color card, coded card. Talk about churn. I want to watch in his room one day. I got to go out there. I need to get out and at least get more personal with some of the New Jersey state coaches. I didn't do a good job of that when I was the state director. And there was no excuses on my part to do that, but I'd love to go out and watch other coaches coach and learn from them a little bit more. I wish we would have had more time out in Minnesota. So if I would have came out on Wednesday, my plan was to come out and see Coach Gust, because she invited us all out there to her place. That didn't happen, but I think that sharing more and if you're not a big sharer on Instagram, maybe send them a text with a video. Send me a text with a video of what you're doing with the combat fitness test. That would make me feel great to watch that 10, 15 second clip of how you guys are doing it. To me, I think that's a big deal. Not just the phone calls and talking about it, but actually seeing it. Like I said, when I was in college, I was a visual learner. I could take great notes. So when the stuff is going on, I like to see things and take notes on them. So yeah, I think that's a big deal for me. Share some stuff that way.
Share some stuff. That's great advice. Is there anything that I didn't ask you that you're like, I wish I was able to talk about this, or I'd love to talk about this?
I thought this was awesome. I thought, I think that, it's the next year for high school strength and conditioning, I think is going to be a big year. I think coming out of COVID, all the things we talked about policy wise going into COVID, how the kids are going to be deconditioned. I thought we did a great job with that. Now that we're past that a little bit, I think that it's almost like doing a band assisted run. You know what I mean? So we got the slingshot tight. Now you get that run going and you feel like you're going 100 miles an hour. I think we really, I think it's going to feel like that over the next year for high school strength and conditioning, because we were priming the pump and then COVID hit. And then all we had to concentrate on was, well, their fitness levels and this and that. Not that that wasn't important, but I think now to get the public to understand who we are and what we can do for the schools, because we were right on the cusp of that. We were right on the edge when it ended. And then there were no more board meetings. There were no more places where you could go. You couldn't go out and we couldn't meet with the parents. Now I think that if we could get out there and talk to the parents and show what we can do. And it all started in Minnesota and, meeting up again and talking about it. I just think it's going to be a great year as far as high school strength conditioning and what we can do to show the public and our communities how important we are for our school systems. And you guys did it. You're part of what happened. Explain what happened in Minnesota. You guys are part of the high school coaches association, right?
Yeah, we were unanimously, which is exciting, accepted into the Minnesota State High School Coaches Association. So what that means now for us is, we have a seat at the table for the meeting. we're able to send up to 3 people. They're like, most people send one. Well, we'll send 3
Mhm.
because we can. We're able to do statewide a coach of the year, assistant coach of the year, what I really like. So we can start
Wow.
highlighting some programs and have that be the norm, that you have assistant coaches in strength and conditioning. And then athletes of the year, we're able to nominate website access. So they have somebody who runs their website so we can put all of our stuff of clinics, and the most important thing, starting to get a state directory that's not just generated by us and gone through each time. So we'll have people that'll hopefully sign up, and if they're already a coach, which is nice, they
Yeah.
can now sign up and put strength coach on their coaching resume as well.
That's coming out of the gate. That's coming out of the gate big in Minnesota. And I saw a picture of Coach of RJ down in Texas at the Texas High School convention. And I think they said there was 15,000 people there and at the booth there. I mean, again, when I did the New Jersey athletic directors one in Atlantic City, there were 300 ADs there, and I had a booth. And all I kept hearing was, now we're okay, or we don't have enough money, for, strength coaches. Now we have ADs calling me and calling Zach. And I think that this is going to be, again, just a great year for high school strength and conditioning, coming out of the gate, coming out of the COVID gate, and just showing the communities and our athletic directors what we've been doing over the last year, not only the last year, but what we can do now in the future.
Yeah. Just put us strength coaches on computers for a year and we come out roaring, don't we?
We're beating our heads.
Yeah, you did see that though. You can tell in the past at the beginning stages, it was about definitely connecting, but now it is like avenue for change. What are you going to do? Well, here, come on board with me. Let's do this.
Yeah.
And I'm loving that. And I'm grateful to just have been a big part of it and just be along for the ride and drive the car sometimes too. That's been good. Well, we finish up, and you've already talked about so many things. I think you probably have answered this over and over again, but your definition right now, how are you making it big time for your school in New Jersey? What does it mean to you?
It's trying to, our football coach brought a vision in when he came in 5 years ago of one community, one team, for his football team. I've kind of embraced that now to get us to understand that, and to get the coaches to understand. And I have coaches now emailing me, how do I get involved in the leadership group, based off of some of the language that the kids are speaking, not just for one team, but for the whole school in general. And I think that's something that I want to lead with at our school, is to get that community feel with all the coaches. Not that we all have to be clones, but that we're all speaking a similar language, and keep moving forward with that, and just making that culture a little bit stronger, because I think we are fractured a little bit. And I think that we've made some great strides, and I don't want to ever step back. I don't want to normalize our excellence. I want to keep moving ahead. I want to keep making those steps up a little bit more each time, even if the step is a little bit. It's not the big step, that everybody wants. You got those expectations. My expectations are pretty low right now. And I just want to keep going small and small and small till we get to a point where, when I'm 62, 63 years old and I step out, I know that legacy can continue on at Hunterdon Central and even get better.
Oh, love it. And you will. I know you will. Just what you have done in this past year, and watching your students, talk to you, and you can tell you are Coach Kolody. That's your first name in your community. You can tell.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably, I would say, one of the greatest assets as a person, is having them think of you as coach. So thank you so much today. Talk to them. Now you've invited them to reach out to you. Where can we find you?
I'm like an Instagram guy now. Red Devil Strength is my Instagram. Email anytime. It's P as in Paul, my last name, KOLODY @HCRHS. So that's Hunterdon Central Regional High School.org. And hey, you can call me too, text me. Just don't text me at night. I turn that I just learned that moon thing. So
Oh,
you
yeah.
don't have anything going on. Yeah, I'm not good. But my phone number is 908-334-8339. Text me. I'll get back to you as soon as I can. And I love to talk on the phone. I'm not the biggest texter. I'd rather call you and we have a conversation. And to me, that's more important than anything else.
Wonderful. Well, Coach Kolody, I am grateful to know you, and you're my first ever male interviewee. So thank you for that. I'm comfortable. It was wonderful, and I appreciate you so much.
Coach, thank you so much. Again, this has been big time for me. I really appreciate it, and I look forward to listening.
Excellent. Well, this has been another episode of the Big Time Strength Podcast. I hope that you are enjoying your summer. If you are listening to this right away, I hope you are reflecting on your summer. If you're listening to this later on in the year, and we're excited for you to just keep doing great things where you're at and make it a great week. Enjoy the day.